So here we go, Vivi, episode 48. Now we're getting near the 50 and then we'll have a break.
Yes, I think a well-deserved one, personally.
And this is Ashleigh Cooper.
Yeah.
This is our first Londoner who's an antique dealer.
Yes.
And he's a lovely lad, not as dodgy as that sounds.
Not as stereotyped and dodgy as it sounds, no. But there is something about a London accent, isn't there, that could be seen as a little bit woo, whoa. Only fools and horses and all that.
Yes, step toes.
Yeah. A lovely guy, anyway.
And I loved Only Fools and Horses, and I love Steptoe and Son.
Yes.
So it's all okay.
Yeah.
Before we say anything offensive about Londoners, should we just move on to talking to Ashleigh?
Yes. We both know him, don't we? And from way back in different contexts.
Yeah,
so it was nice
you've known him for donkey's years. I've known him mostly over the last 8 or 10 months.
Yeah, through the U3A.
Yeah, I got strangely into walking cricket, which I'd never done before in any particular form.
No.
Anyway, so here we go. Let's nip round to Ashleigh's, shall we?
Yes. Dave and I are sitting here in a lovely conservatory, lovely and bright, in Chisley Gardens, talking to Ashleigh Cooper, who I first met quite a while ago now, because we were on the same quiz team. Do you remember, Ashleigh?
Yeah, in Lane Ends. So just one of my local pubs, but I tend to go to the Robin Hood now for my quizzes, to be honest.
Oh, do they do quizzes there as well?
Yeah, that's popular and very social. You get the same sort of people returning regularly.
Yeah, because the one we were in the Todd League, weren't we? Because there wasn't one in Hebden Bridge.
Yeah, we did actually go and play some teams in Todd, didn't we?
We did.
Like at the Shannon. I think the Shannon's gone now, isn't it?
Shannon and Chisley. Yeah.
And Burdett and
that's gone too. Yeah.
It took me years before I was able to pronounce that one.
Yeah, but
and that would have been with who we used to call Quizmaster Jeff.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning it, but that's not a local accent. So how long have you been here and where did you start out?
So it's like 35 years now. So I've actually lived in Yorkshire longer than I lived in London, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up in 1989.
Yeah.
The reason that I came up, because I always get asked a question of what brought you up here, because it's particularly in the 80s or before it was far less well known and like a tourist spot it is now. But a friend of mine bought a cottage in Old Town for about 300 quid, as I remember, in the 60s.
Yeah.
And we used to just come up and stay and go over the moors with the dogs. Sometimes do shooting for wood pigeons and that. And that was the reason why I knew the area. So I thought if ever I made the break, I'd try it first, and just been here ever since.
Yeah. So I'm assuming not a decision you regret then.
No, absolutely not, no.
Yeah, that's
but the
great.
accent doesn't disappear, as you say.
No, well, some things stay with you, don't they? So you've got a lot of things going on. One of them is that you're an antiques expert.
Yeah, I've ceased dealing now, but funny enough, just occasionally it does come to light where I'm useful again, which is somebody was getting rid of some stuff earlier in the year I was a friend with, so I went and gave them all the ins and outs and benefits them in lunch and helped clear the house and bought a friend of mine who was a dealer who I knew could give them cash in hand for all the best bits.
So how did it work when you were an antique dealer? Did you have a shop yourself? Or were you...
In London, my dad was like managing director of a huge shop. It was just in front of Euston Station, a place called North Gower Street, which is like just opposite our shop was the Transport and General Workers Union. So it was quite a familiar spot to a lot of people on the edge of the West End.
So you learnt your stuff from him.
Yeah, and eventually my dad asked me to go out and do some buying, which is daunting when you're thrown in at the deep end.
I bet. Yeah.
People can call you all the names under the sun when you know, they don't like your prices that you're giving or whatever.
Round here, they just say, how much? Catchphrase. So did you carry that on when you came to the valley?
Yeah,
then?
on a much smaller scale, yeah. But obviously it was more difficult when I found out, because basically used to sort of specialise in furniture, and that's where a lot of my expertise lies. But I found that I wasn't going to make a great deal of money that way, so I had to brush up on a lot of my other stuff that I had a grounding in, but like Art Deco ceramics, I studied it big time and earned some reasonable money out of that, to be fair.
Yeah, I always find it really weird that people sort of working out the value or the price of something.
Yeah, it seems so different to what a lot of people do today. That's why I say I sort of like to pass on the knowledge to people, but otherwise it sort of dies with you.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the antiques game's changed so much since the advent of the internet, of course. Everybody's sort of potentially a knowing expert now online, whereas before our so-called expertise meant perhaps a bit more because we dealt with it every day of our lives.
And it's would have thought an interesting line, because everything has a story behind it. I mean, that's the aspect that I would see, that every piece of furniture or vase or whatever has a story behind it.
Yeah, you do see that, like on the Antique Roadshow, for example, don't you? So I do a few Antique Roadshow things from time to time. And so I do a few talks on antiques now. I tend to give my fees to the RSPCA because it tends to be people like WI. Probus asked me to do one, which I completed earlier in the year. The Antiquarian Society, I'm doing one towards the end of this year.
So the RSPCA does have a special place in your heart, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, and like I've come up with all sorts of schemes to earn money. So I have like an arthritic knee, and I came up with one scheme one day to, if I worked, because I only normally do 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon. So
At the charity shop?
Yeah, and would people sponsor me if I got there at 8 or 9 in the morning, did all day, and with the stipulation that I couldn't sit down knowing that I'd suffer.
And did you get sponsored?
I did manage to get 200 or 300 quid for it, and I did suffer, but fortunately I'd taken some naproxen to mitigate the pain in my knee.
I'd feel really guilty if I'd sponsored you for that.
Yeah. I mean, it does sound like a bit of a con. Sponsor me to do a day at work. You know, most people would be like, yeah, right. Well, some of us do that all the time.
Yeah, it's strange in that respect.
Oh, I hope you're not suffering too much with...
I am this week, but it just comes and goes. It's something you just live with, don't you?
So it must be interesting working in a charity shop. Anyway,
well, yeah, it's good
the stuff
for
that
me
comes
because
in.
it's like, again, sort of stuff that sort of, I know, floats my boat really, because, you know, you see stuff that's fresh or some stuff you recognise and I know I can help them with. And if they were, you know, in times before, I could get them instant cash if it was things that they didn't want hanging around the shop and just wanted the money in their coffers quickly. I know people who, you know, are after certain things, and like, for example, stag's heads, and that. I had 1 or 2 of those, and I took them to a friend who immediately bought them because he supplies a guy who does a lot of pubs in Ireland, for example, and the kind of things he wants.
Oh, because that's really useful knowledge, isn't it? You know, I mean, if I was working in a charity shop, you know, if somebody brought a stag's head in, it wouldn't really mean anything to me. I just think, let's going to buy one of them. When you've got the knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few under our umbrella of the RSPCA in West Yorkshire. They have often asked, like, I don't know if I could help, or but the manager says, oh, we want to keep him, we don't want to. I said, I don't mind going 1 day a week to, or appraise what they've got sometime at Queen's Road in Halifax, for example, because they get a lot of furniture and different stuff. Whereas we're just a small shop in Hebden.
Yeah, I've worked in charity shops, and when we were doing our travels a couple of years ago, I was in Australia, and we were going to be there for weeks and weeks. So I thought, I'd rather do something while we're here. So I volunteered at St Vincent de Paul's, Vinnie. It was called a Vinnie's. And it was quite a few differences, you know, but they had a till where you just pressed what it was, like clothes or whatever. And she said, and press here for Manchester. And I was like, what does that mean? You know, and it's bedding. It's what they call bedding in Australia.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, because people went there from Australia.
I got an aunt in Melbourne.
Yeah, and she was like surprised I didn't know. She said, well, if somebody buys some Manchester, yeah, you know. So things like that. And also they didn't clean or wash anything. You know, like I've worked in the Oxfam and they would steam the clothes that came in.
Yeah.
And she said, no, they just buy it as seen, you know, which meant rumpled and grubby. So, yeah, quite a few cultural differences there, you know.
It's quite surprising, yeah.
Yeah, but I enjoyed working there. It's nice to do something kind of useful, isn't it? You know?
Australia has all sorts of interesting things. I mean, when I finished my work in life, I did actually do technology, and I worked for cash converters, which is, as I understand it, was conceived first in Australia.
Was it? I didn't know
interesting
that.
business, yeah. It's all, you know, technology is a bit different for me from doing antiques.
Yeah.
It sharpened me up, to be honest. And,
Did it? Yeah.
it kept me on my toes. It was a good thing for me mentally. So.
Our daughter calls it the house of broken dreams, cash converters. Yeah. So you also do other sort of active things, walking, football, cricket, table tennis?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that when I first was going to retire, I thought, well, how am I going to fill my time? And within 3 weeks, I was sort of looking in the paper for jobs and thought, I can't hack this. I want to go back to work. And then I just came up with this scheme. I thought, well, let's see what sports are available, sort of stuff, sort of things that I might be good at. And there's quite a lot, obviously a lot of choice. But the great thing about Yorkshire, and I can't say enough about this area, in Lancashire as well, is like the grassroots. I mean, to me, it's a lot better than where I'm from. You know, the availability, and you can do stuff when you're older, and you think the chances pass you by. I mean, I did actually try things like boxing training and all that. I mean, I've been hit by boxing gloves before. It's not very pleasant, but I know how to do it a bit, but obviously your reflexes go as you get older, and I realised that wasn't for me. So then funny enough, my next door neighbour here told me about walking football in Toggerton, and that's been a passion. So I've done that ever since I started working, which is about 8 or 9 years ago now.
Wow, yeah.
And then walking cricket also came to the fore, and of course Dave is one of our players as well as football as well. Yeah. So that's really popular and beneficial to health-wise. I mean, I found doing these things, plus I did Tai Chi. I wish I was still doing it, but the class moved. And table tennis as well. And I managed to lower my blood pressure and my blood sugars by about 25%.
Really? Wow.
By doing all this. And so it's not just, and I get great fun out of it. I mean, it's it's not a chore. So that's the great thing, that you can do things that you sort of pass you by.
And you played cricket and football when you were younger?
Well, I played football a lot, only to a lower level, but I had some friends who played in teams with some famous footballers like Laurie Cunningham and a number of others. But so that would have been like Islington area in London, because I went to school at the Angel. A school called Dame Alice Owens. It had its 400-year anniversary not so long ago, about 10 years ago, but I totally forgot about it. Missed it, unfortunately, but it's still thriving not in Islington now, but in Potters Bar in Hertfordshire.
cricket? Did you play cricket?
I found I was good at it at school, but they always seemed to err on the side to the kids who had money, who had all the equipment.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Had the cricket sweaters and what have you, and they were the ones who get sent to Lords for the training. And I'd have been an ideal candidate because I could have walked to Lords cricket ground from my house, which I did many times to spectate. But I mean, I felt I was good enough, but I wasn't given a chance.
Oh, that's a shame, isn't it? That, things are run that way.
It is. I mean, I think from what you were saying before as well, I think it's more of a working class sport in the north. Cricket.
And I think, I don't know if it's anything to do with it, perhaps you could tell me what your experience is, but I find people very much more like a regimented, doing the same sort of things every week, whereas in London we're a lot more spontaneous, or like to do different things every week and not be committed to certain
commitment
things.
in Yorkshire. Can't stick
I
at it,
must
lad.
admit, I seem to have been taken over by the commitment part of it. Yeah.
Yes, you do see, because you coach in the walking cricket, aren't you?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So because our coach left and said he'd sort of taken us as far as we could go, so somebody had to pick up the slack.
Oh,
So
well done.
volunteered with Andrew.
Yes, I know. I mean, I played the walking cricket, and I'd never really played cricket before for the last 8 or 10 months, and not really much idea what I'm doing, but I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yes, I mean, you're one of the good all-round players as well, like you are with football. I mean, it stands out a mile if people had any aptitude when they were younger, or even if they haven't played much. Like the amazing thing I found about the walking football was if you had certain skills, you wouldn't think in your 60s that they would come back to you. But if you start playing, even though it's at a walking pace rather than running, your skill becomes really twice as useful to you, and it does come back because it ain't a walking sport. You can't run away from people and get that advantage of trying to beat somebody. So any kind of skill you've got with the ball is massively advantageous.
You do voluntary work, and it helps keep your mind sharp, and also
Doing the quizzes every week is good for that as well.
so you reckon your brain's
Yeah,
getting a workout then,
yeah, it's important, I think.
as well as physically. And
I do compile quizzes for the Blue Pig sometimes as well.
yeah,
And you've just done the beer festival there.
Yeah, that's really popular, and of course it's nice to have it as a sort of open day, as it's like Blue Pig's like an affiliated club where guests on a normal day of the week, if they're coming past at the weekend, where so many walkers are, they'll be asked to pay a £2 fee if they're willing to come in the club. But I mean, that's not much of a hardship, to be honest, because you make that more than that back in your first round of drinks because it's so much cheaper in there.
I bet when your friends come over from London, they must be astonished.
Yeah, I mean,
the price of a round
incredible.
of drinks.
They'd be saying, how much in the opposite direction?
yeah, especially at the Blue Pig and the like. Yeah, I took my uncle there. He was over from Australia, and we bought some sandwiches from the Wine and Cheese. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, I know.
And they were thrilled with that, him and his missus. So I said, come on, we'll take the dog out and we'll go and sit outside the Blue Pig. And I don't know if it's open, but we'll just go there anyway. And the dog ran round and was in and out the river, and they were saying, what a beautiful spot. And then I said, it's open, do you want a pint? And honestly, I thought it died in God's heaven. Can have all this and a pint.
So I'm presuming, was that a sunny day? Because that's when it really comes into
It was beautiful,
to its own, because it's like that running water. It's just like
I know.
almost like a selective holiday spot.
I know.
It's also where we once learned about the sun and the darkness of the valley here, because when we just arrived, I mean, people had told us that the sort of north side of the south side, sorry, of Fairfield, didn't get the sun for very long. But we're sitting outside the Blue Pig one time, and it was quite dark, and this bloke said, "Oh, the sun will be up soon." And I said, "Oh, what time do you mean?" The 17th of March.
Yeah.
I should have seen that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was thrilled, yeah. So I hear you've raised money for Ukraine, and what happened there? Where did that start, and how did you do it?
So, like I say, I just had this idea in bed, and I just thought, would people go for it and sponsor us if we played non-stop for 4 hours, since we're all like granddad sort of ages and all that. And, as soon as people knew it's for Ukraine and the kind of cause, valid cause still to this day, people dug really deep, and I thought, we might raise, because there's about 10, 15 of us, we might raise 400 or 500 quid, and it was like about that much short of 5,000 that we raised.
Wow.
So it was really beneficial and a thing to do, and at the same time, I managed to borrow a Ukraine flag from one of our players who's married to a Ukrainian woman, and also lent that to Wadsworth Community Centre up here, which is virtually next door to my house here. And they did a sponsored event with drinks and bands. So yeah, there was a lot going on at that time and a lot of money raised. And so we particularly did it through UNICEF for the Ukrainian children in mind, because so many of us, like say, granddads and parents, and really we're starting to think about the knock-on effects for the poor children, for example.
So you were granddad yourself then?
Yeah, I just have one grandson. He'll be 10 this Christmas, and
Oh, lovely.
he likes his football.
Yeah. So was it the football that you did for 4 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did at the local paper, I think, got involved, and trying to think, it was the mayor or the deputy mayor of Todmorden came along, and we got some photos and that, and yeah, they watched us play and make sure that we did our full time. I
So,
was ready for a beer at the end, I can tell you.
yes, I was going to say, how did you feel after 4 hours?
It was tiring, but we were sort of revolving, so there were times just to grab a water bottle and a banana and then carry on.
Was it, when you were a little kid, was it the same as it was for me in Liverpool, that you go out in the morning in the school holidays and there'd be a game of football and it'd just go on all day and people would drift in and out of it.
Yeah,
You might
it's
have
very much
entirely
like
different
that.
teams at the end from at the start.
But I mean, I don't know your experience, but I remember so often we couldn't afford, or we couldn't find a friend who had a normal sized football. We used to play with a tennis ball.
Oh, really? Wow.
And balls that sort of size that were plastic and might be slightly bigger, but it made you eventually more skillful, because it's much trickier playing with a ball like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, no, similar experiences. Play with whatever you can find, really.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder sometimes if kids are missing something these days because of that. I mean, sometimes you look back through rose-tinted glasses, didn't you? But I find that sort of time in my life particularly memorable and enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I didn't never played with a proper football until we got into the school team in the secondary school.
Yeah, I found again that was difficult. I couldn't get into the school team. Didn't get the chances up. My chances might have been better served in goal, but even then it was who you knew, because there were a lot of at secondary school, because I lived in Primrose Hill, so I had to travel to the Angel, so it was about 5 miles.
All right.
So, but there were a lot of guys that went to secondary school that knew each other already from their primary school, and sort of went together, but there was only me and one other guy from my area. So.
Yeah.
Oh, my experience is different. I went to the same local school from the age of 5 to nearly 16 when I left. But my problem was that there was so many good footballers in the school and in the area.
Yeah, that was
Heighton
my
Heighton
experience.
boys were the national champions.
Mhm.
A lad called Peter Reid played in my position.
Well, Lee
Yeah.
Peter Reid.
Yes.
Well, yeah, he
Yeah.
was,
So I thought,
He was tough.
I must be rubbish, can't get into the Heighton boys team. And we realised that,
Yeah.
might not quite be the case. Yes, and several of the lads from the school team became professionals as well.
Mm.
But then football was about all we did, really.
yeah, it was religion for me, I have to say.
Yeah.
Big Spurs fan, but
I was going to say, what team do you support? Yeah.
North London, there's only two choices.
well, yeah, most of my friends are Arsenal fans. I mean, I've been to Arsenal's games many a times with my mates, and they sometimes put me on the spot. I've been standing in the North Bank at Arsenal or the Clock End, and one of my unkind friends would say, "Look, here's the Spurs supporter here." Oh no!
Well, unless there's anything else you want to
So I suppose
tell
what
us
else
about.
the only other thing I'm really involved in is the cinema, which is now thriving. You know,
Oh,
we have
yeah.
the friends of the cinema committee, and the cinema's doing so well now since the digitalisation and like the new managers have really sort of upped the ante, and because around about the time of the 2012 floods, it was really under threat when it got deluged last time, and that was when we decided to form the committee. So it was myself and like the previous cinema manager, Rebecca Fozzard.
It's such an asset to the town, isn't it? The
Yeah,
picture
absolutely.
house. Yeah.
And like cinema's also now Cinema of Sanctuary. We helped set up things that refugees and people who are seeking status to live in this country that they could come to the cinema. So that's still going along. I'm not involved in that anymore, but help sow the seeds. But the women running it, and it still goes on once a month, I believe, and various food things being involved. And it's there's a lot to do, and like the committee itself, when we still get grants and things, and a lot of the money goes to various things that cinema might need, like the new projector, which was a serious amount of money, and for improvements to the building, we offer money for that, and there's various strings to its bow.
Right, I bet your friends from London sometimes say, "What do you do up there in the country?" You're snowed under. Yeah, it's stuff. It's great.
It sometimes seems busier than when I was working.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you can just say, "Oh, and the only other thing I do is,"
Yeah.
on top of all these other things.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I think you're just another example of the community spirit of the valley.
Well, thanks for that, Ashleigh. It's been really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure.
And may bump into you at the Robin Hood sometime
that'd
for
be
the
good,
quiz. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Splendid.
Cheers.